All right, I kind of want to talk a little bit about the topic of crying. I know it's kind of a strange topic, but I think you might find it kind of interesting. Crying is your body's natural response to feeling overloaded with emotion. Yet, how many of you out there refuse to cry? How many of you view crying as a sign of weakness? How many of you know that you should cry or feel like you should be crying in a certain situation, but just aren't able to? So, like with other negative emotions, we develop defense mechanisms so that we don't allow ourselves to feel more negative emotion. And I think a lot of people that I've talked to, when they talk about crying, they have this idea in their mind that if they cry, they're going to feel even more negative emotion than they did before they cried. But the reality is the emotion is still there. The only difference is you've used a defense mechanism in order to keep yourself from crying because you have the belief that if you cry, it's actually more negative emotion. But it's really just a psychological trick. And the healthy thing to do is to cry when it's appropriate to cry. And you might ask yourself, okay, what does that mean? That means that when you're given a situation where it's appropriate for you to feel sad and cry, like the death of a loved one, allow yourself to cry. If you find yourself not being able to cry, then that means that what you've done is the defense mechanism has become so strong with you that those emotions have been repressed, and the belief of I need to be strong or crying is a sign of weakness becomes overpowering, and that trumps your brain's ability to be able to allow itself to cry. There's another level of not allowing yourself to cry, which is just a feeling of numbness. So when I hear a client tell me that they feel numb, what that's really telling me is that there is a lake of emotion that has been repressed, and your brain just can't handle all of the amount of emotion. And so what it does is it, in a way, shuts down. And the default emotion is emptiness or numbness. So if you find yourself in situations where you know that you probably should be emotional or allowing yourself to cry, but you can't, and you feel more numb or empty, that tells me that your defense mechanism for those negative emotions is very strong. And I would refer you back to my video about vulnerability. The reality is, no matter what you were taught growing up, or how you were parented, or what you believe about people that cry, it's a natural response to negative emotion. It's also okay to cry. If you find yourself just really refusing to cry in front of other people, it's probably also not just a defense mechanism, but it's also, you don't want to feel embarrassment. But if that happens long enough over a long period of time, you get to a point where you can't even cry by yourself. And if you're too embarrassed to cry by yourself, we're dealing with some pretty deep, significant depressive symptoms and emotional trauma. Don't be afraid to cry. I know it sounds like it's not macho or whatever. It's not, not ideal. People don't, some people just get super embarrassed, and they get to a point where they just go, there's no way I'm going to allow myself to do that. Because, even with some people, if they cry a little bit, it's kind of like a floodgate. Here it comes. There's this flood, this dam opening of emotion. What you have to do is realize that whether you're in therapy or by yourself, when you allow yourself to cry, you do it a little bit at a time. And then at the end of those little crying sessions, if you will, you realize you're okay, and that nothing bad has happened, that you haven't died, that, your life really hasn't changed that much, but what you've done is allowed yourself to feel emotion again. And I think we live in a world sometimes where we get to the point where we have to numb ourselves so much, whether it's through substances or electronics or whatever, that we just don't feel a lot of emotion. And I think that goes very much against our nature. Anyways, let me know what you guys think about the topic again. Let me know if you have a hard time crying. Tell me what your thoughts are about crying. Be honest. Do you think it's weak if people cry? Do you think it's a sign of strength? Do you think it's on a spectrum? You don't want to cry too much, but you don't want to cry at all. I don't know. Tell me what you guys think. Thank you.